Okay. All right. Don't attack me. Okay. Hello. I'm John. Welcome or welcome back. So this will be the second part of my unread fiction bookshelf tour. So I'm not sure how many of these shelves I'm going to do, but the reason for this tour is because I'm not very familiar with some of the books or some of the writers on these shelves of these books, and so I would like to ask the viewers for information about these books, for opinions about these books, and maybe ask if, maybe these books would be the wrong books for someone first getting started with an author or something of that nature. I just love to hear people's stories about the books that they have read, honestly, and to get an idea of what the books are about, because I don't always know very much about what the books are about besides what's on the back cover. Yes. Hello. That's, yes, it's good to see you. All right. We've got another member of the cast here. So, uh, but anyway, so my the reason that I want to do this is also because I am hoping to spend less time buying books in the future, in the immediate future anyway, the next month or so. And I want to shop my shelves. I want to look around at what I already have and get reacquainted with what I already have, and choose books that I already have to read. I feel that that was a long roundabout way of saying that. And so feel free to comment. Let me know about these books, all right? I'd really appreciate it. And so this first book is one that I've had for, oh boy, 16, 17 years. It's been a long time. I've read very little of it. It is The Complete Stories of Franz Kafka, with a foreword by John Updike. When I bought this book, I had no idea who John Updike was. I talked about Kafka a little bit in my last video, and I feel it feels wrong to me to have read so much about Kafka and to have seen so many videos about Kafka, and I've read about him in like philosophical books and that sort of thing, and it just feels wrong for me not to have read Kafka's fiction. And I have this book and I have The Trial, and so I have read bits and pieces of this, but I have never read the one that I have read that I really remember is In the Penal Colony. So that is a wild story. It is about a man who becomes obsessed with his he is a warden of this, a commandant of this penal colony, and the way that they execute prisoners there is that they have this machine which etches their crime into their bodies with these like needles, and he becomes so obsessed with it that it is being banned and is going to be torn down and that sort of thing, and so he puts himself in it. I read that like 15 years ago. It's been a long time. I need to reread that. I need to read all of Kafka. Like I said, like I said in my last video, Kafka was known to read his own stories aloud and howl with laughter, and that just does not come through to me in what I have read of his fiction. And I wonder if that's translation or if that is just that Kafka and I have a very, very different sense of humor. The next book is really short. It is The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole. I think this is like 90 pages long. It is a Gothic story from, when was this even published? So it would have been published sometime in the 1700s. And I used to have, what is that other, the really big, it's just a Gothic novel um, oh, The Mystery of Udolpho, right. So I used to have that. I don't have it anymore. And I think that Gothic fiction is kind of a little bit, it is very far out of my wheelhouse, this old-fashioned Gothic fiction. And so I don't know if I will ever get around to reading this. It is short enough that I could probably read it in one day, but it would require it would require I would say some mental gymnastics on my part to get into it. I don't know. I might start it and really, really enjoy it. Who knows? The only, like the most recent example of gothic fiction I've read was actually Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier, and I enjoyed that, but the whole book I felt it was really, really overwritten. The next is The Penguin, Henry Lawson short stories. So Henry Lawson was Australian, I believe, and all these short stories take place in Australia, and I think these are from the 1800s, right? It would be just too bad if they would tell me the date on the back. Let's see. Regarded as a legend rather than a writer to be enjoyed. His short stories, some humorous, some wry, some moving, are, above all, enjoyable. So I just don't know anything at all about Henry Lawson. Here we go, right here. Henry Lawson was born at Grenfell, New South Wales in 1867. His father was a Norwegian sailor who was unsuccessfully prospecting for gold. Henry Lawson was partially deaf from the age of 9, had little formal education, and was an apprentice in Sydney when he began to write verse and short stories, and his first published work was in 1887. So that's interesting. This would probably be really interesting. My only real, I don't think I've read very much fiction from Australia, and I have only read a couple of books about Australia. I read The Fatal Shore, and I read In a Sunburned Country by Bill Bryson, which I really like both of those books. The Fatal Shore was a little bit hard to get through. Uh-oh. I need to arrange these better, or I'll get all mixed up. The next is Paradise Lost by John Milton. I have had a copy of this for 20 some odd years because I first got a copy in a box of books that my grandma brought home for me when I was probably 9. I think I was in 3rd grade, 8 or 9. So it would have been around the time that I got Grendel. It was the same box in which I got Grendel, actually. So Grendel by John Gardner was the first adult novel that I ever read, and I read it when I was in 3rd grade. And yeah, so I've been meaning to read Paradise Lost for 2/3 of my life now. And the next is Oil by Upton Sinclair, and I know that Upton Sinclair wrote several books like this about the state of the U.S. in like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and so I also have his book The Jungle. I sometimes mess up and call him Sinclair Lewis, which I would imagine probably I'm not the only one to do that. So I've never actually read anything by Upton Sinclair, but I have read about Upton Sinclair and his books and how they really changed some things, and not in the way that he wanted, really. Like when he wrote The Jungle, he wrote The Jungle to talk about the plight of immigrants and like how they were being abused and taken advantage of and everything. And people read it, and really what they were bothered by was how disgusting the food industry was and like how dirty their food was. So it kind of didn't do what he wanted it to do. I don't know. I know that the There Will Be Blood was very loosely based upon this book, which I kind of like that movie. The next is Kokoro by Natsumi Soseki. And all I know about this one is it's about a Japanese student in, the early 1900s, I think, and he falls under the tutelage of an older man, like an old man. And I've heard some people really enjoy this, and some people really, really don't. I think that if you've ever read Japanese fiction, you will know that it is quite a bit different from, I guess, Western fiction in sentiments, I guess. It's really hard to actually put into words what is different exactly. Part of it is just the difference in perspectives and mindsets between like the US and Japan, especially Japan like 100 some odd years ago. This may not be quite that old. I bought this. Okay, so it says here that Soseki Natsumi died in 1916. So, yeah, I don't know anything about it really. I just know that it's about a student and his growing up. This is Mr. Midshipman Easy, and by Captain Marriott, who was a real-life sailor in the 1800s, maybe the 1700s even. I bought this, I I have bought this since I've been on this channel, and I have heard people say that it is really good. It requires kind of a, I mean, you are reading a book that is almost 200 years old, so you have to adjust your mindset, but it's supposed to be really good. The next is The Broom of the System by David Foster Wallace. So I read Infinite Jest. I read every part of Infinite Jest almost, I would say about 8 years ago. I really, really liked Infinite Jest, actually, and I think it gets a bad rap. I can understand why, because Foster Wallace he liked to make up his own words. He wrote a bunch of footnotes, but I'm a weirdo. I like to read footnotes, even in fiction. But recently I tried to reread, well, first I sat down and tried to reread Infinite Jest, just for like 10 pages a day, and I made it about 20 or 30 pages in. Maybe not even that far. It may have been like 16 pages in, and I just thought, no, it just wasn't the right time or something. I think maybe another decade will have to pass before I can read Infinite Jest. I remember reading somewhere that The Broom of the System, or actually I think it was with an interview that David Foster Wallace did on the radio, where he was explaining that the broom of the system is what his grandmother used to call wheat bread. Yeah, so I know certain things about this a little bit. I know that there's like a neighborhood, and for some reason it is in the shape of Jane Mansfield's head. There's something about a parrot and a nursing home, and I think one of the old people goes missing. I don't really know anything else about it. I've read little bits and pieces here and there. I've read the very beginning a couple of times, and I tried also to read his essay collection, A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, about a month ago, and it just did not click with me the way it did when I was younger. But I would, I still want to give his other books a chance. What's the other one called? I think he wrote, I know, was it The Pale King? I don't know. I know that one wasn't finished. This is another book that I have bought since I had the channel. It is The Cruel Sea by Nicholas Montserrat. And this is really right up my alley. I like to read these books about ships in the Second World War and the First World War and stuff like that. I like to read books about ships in general. So this is a novel about, is it a destroyer? Usually these books are about destroyers. And I'm not entirely sure, are they ferrying goods? Are they like transporting ships from like Iceland to Archangel in Russia, or are they making the Atlantic run, the North Sea run or the Atlantic run? I don't know exactly, but I have read books by like Douglas Reamon and that sort of thing, so I'm very familiar with these kinds of books. And I think the reason I haven't read it is just because I'm very familiar with those books. And sometimes I just need some time in between them, but I think that I would really enjoy them. The next is Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak. And this is one of those big Russian epics. So I think this takes place during like the Russian Revolution, and I know very little about it. I know that the Russians, the epic Russian writers sometimes frustrate me because their books are just overwhelming. I have had reason lately to think about like Dostoevsky and that sort of thing, those sort of books, and like I was explaining to someone that to Dostoevsky, for instance, peeling an onion is never just peeling an onion. It always has to be this grand philosophical human action, and so I'm a little bit frightened of reading the Russian classics just because I find that level of finding meaning in every little thing exhausting and somewhat overwhelming. And I don't know if Pasternak is like that at all. I have no idea. Was Pasternak was a Russian, right? Yes, he was born in Moscow in 1890. In 1958, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, but facing threats from Soviet authorities, he refused the prize. He lived in virtual exile in an artist community near Moscow until his death in 1960. So, my mom told me that I would really, really enjoy this book, right? It's just a matter of getting started on it. And I have a lot of Russian fiction around here. And like I said, it just frightens me because the Russian writers, the great Russian writers, at least the ones who have been translated into English, they just find so much meaning in things, and like they like to focus in on one little thing, and it's like, yeah, come on, let's go. Can we go? I'm a reader. I am a reader who rather likes to get to the point, right? And so like that sort of thing, it feels like beating around the bush to me, even though I know, it's just what your tastes are. But I always appreciate reading books like this, and I know that if I read this, I would appreciate it fully. And it would probably be one of those books that I would look back on and go, man, that Dr. Zhivago was really, really good. So the next book is also about the sea, a ship at sea during the Second World War, a boat. This is Das Boot, the boat, by Lothar Gunther Buchheim. And I have seen the miniseries based on Das Boot many times. I even really like the uncut edition, which is like 4.5 hours long. I really enjoy that movie. I've been wanting to read the book for a long time. I picked this up about 6 months ago, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. After that, we have Magda Szabo's Abigail. I don't really know much about this. I don't know much about Magda Szabo. I don't even know how to pronounce her last name properly, unfortunately. There is a book by Magda Szabo, which is much better known than this one. But I've seen several people talk about it, but not this one. So this is about a teenager who was sent during the Second World War. She lives, where does she live? Hungary. And she is sent to a boarding school with other girls, and I guess it is about like fascism and Nazism and that sort of thing. And I don't really know, but it would be, like I said, these are all books that I know that I would appreciate having read. It's just a matter of actually getting myself to read them. And like I said, please feel free to comment, and if you know about these books, I would love to hear about it. This next one is a wartime edition of A Bell for Adano by John Hersey, and there he is on the back. So this is from, I know this was printed during the war, so this is from 1944. You can tell because it has the thin pages. It has the Book League review from June of 1944. That's pretty neat. And it has like business card. What's this? Mail this card for your 6-volume set of living biographies. Let's see the price here. $1.85 plus 30 cents for postage for 6 books as your first payment, and then 2 months for 4 months. So $9.85 plus 30 cents published. That's not bad. 6 books for $10. It might have been pretty expensive at the time. Here is, you are invited to join the Book League of America. So this is pretty interesting. These are in great shape. And what's this? 2 valuable gift books free with membership in the Book League. So that's, I don't know. That's got nothing to do with the book itself, does it? But it's just neat to look at. It's neat to look at something that is 82 years old. And did John Hersey write Hiroshima? Is that why I know his name? John Hersey. Which this would have been written and printed before all that. So I don't know anything about this. I know that it is about a search for a bell for Adano. So the next book is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And I keep meaning to read this, and I think I will really, really enjoy this. I think this will be a really good book. It's just the length that keeps me from reading it, really. So it's 500 and something pages long, 567 pages, which really isn't that bad. I don't really know anything about Ralph Ellison except for what I read about him in a biography of Chester Himes, the writer Chester Himes, which that was a really interesting biography. I can't remember the name of it, but I didn't know anything about Chester Himes. Like, I didn't know that he had written any books. Like, I had never read any of his books. I just found this biography at a Goodwill, and I was just intrigued by it, and I bought it and took it home and read it. And so that was really good. Chester Himes lived a really interesting life. He was kind of he was not very likable, really, but he went to Paris. Ralph Ellison lived in Paris, and Chester Himes would go and see Ralph Ellison, And did I call him Ralph Ellis? I'm sorry, but yeah. So I would like to read that. And I like I said, I keep picking it up and reading the first few pages, and I really should just keep reading it because I really think that I would enjoy that book. So the next book is Under Fire by Henri Barbusse. This is a book about the First World War, about French soldiers in the First World War, and their lives on the front, in the trenches, their lives back home, and that sort of thing. I haven't read this, but you're always hearing about this book if you read anything about the First World War and the writers of the First World War. And I have read quite a bit about the First World War, but there are still books by Barbusse, by Sassoon, Graves. Those are books that I have, and I really need to get to. The next several books are all by two authors. The first is Daphne du Maurier's The Flight of the Falcon and Rebecca. I've never really heard much about The Flight of the Falcon, but I've heard about Rebecca a lot. I've seen it parodied in so many shows since I was a kid that I feel like I almost know the story of this one, whereas I don't know anything really about The Flight of the Falcon. The only thing that I have read by... No, that's not true. I read a short story collection of hers with, I think, Don't Look Now, the one about the man chasing the girl around Venice in the red hood. Or that was in the movie. I don't remember if she had a red hood in the story. So the movie is with Donald Sutherland, and it's really actually very, very disturbing, actually. Not like disturbing on like a Saw level or anything like that, a modern day kind of disturbing, but it is about a couple whose daughter drowns, and they go, about a year later, they go to Venice, and he starts seeing this girl running around Venice, and he thinks that it is his daughter. And there's some other things that happen, and that last scene is really disturbing. Like, I won't ruin it for you, but it's worth watching. I don't know how available that movie is. Anyway, my point is, I've read a collection of du Maurier's short stories, and I have read Jamaica Inn, and I really liked Jamaica Inn. It was kind of really overwritten for my taste. But I enjoyed it, and I've heard both from Daphne du Maurier and from others that her later books are not quite like Jamaica Inn. She said that she was going through kind of like a gothic phase at the time when she wrote Jamaica Inn. So I think that I would really like these also. And the next three are by Willa Cather, and I have read her book O Pioneers and also The Professor's House. I really, really liked both those books, right? I liked O Pioneers much better than I liked The Professor's House, but that's on account of execution and not because of the book or the story itself. So O Pioneers is just a really good book. Like, it's about this girl who grows up to take over her family farm and how that affects her and her brothers and everything, and what she gives up to run this farm and everything, and then how it changes over time. Really good book. One of just a wonderful book. And the Professor's House is good also, but the Professor's House, and I don't understand why Willa Cather did this, and if anyone knows, I would love to hear about it. So in the Professor's House, she splits it into two separate stories and shoves them together, whereas I feel very much like I really, really enjoyed the story of this professor whose life is changing, and how his daughter has become rich because of a patent that her boyfriend left her. He went to fight in the First World War. He was killed in the trenches. He had invented some kind of motor, and it's made her immensely wealthy. But and her father, the professor, doesn't like what's happening to her because of this money. He sorely misses her dead boyfriend because they were good friends. And what else? Let's see. There's a lot more to it, but the professor's story is really very interesting. But halfway through the book, she's just like abandons the professor's story entirely. It's called The Professor's House because he's in the process of moving from his house to another house that the university has like financed for him or something. And he doesn't want to move, but his wife wants him to move. His daughters want him to move. And he feels comfortable where he is, and it's just kind of a reflection of his life. Really interesting. But then it changes to the dead boyfriend story about how he went on this adventure with a friend of his, someone he met and really respected, and they went and found this like Native American cliff dwelling, and uh, I don't know. I wish so much that she had split that into 2 volumes, split that into 2 books entirely, because I felt like neither one was fleshed out as much as it should have been. I went probably on too long about that. I'm just saying that I have experience with Little Cather. And here is Death Comes for the Archbishop, um, one of ours, and My Antonia. So I know what all these books are about, and I think that I will really enjoy them because I have enjoyed Willa Cather's other books, but I'm kind of gun shy because The Professor's House. I really didn't like how she just, I really wanted to hear more about the professor's life, right? And I feel like both of the stories shoved into that book, I feel like she did a disservice to them by not splitting them into 2 books, and I found that frustrating. And so it's made me gun shy about reading these because I don't want to read another. I do want to read more Cather, but I don't want to read another book where I feel like she cuts them in half and doesn't do them justice. I don't know. I don't think she's done that in any of these books. So I'll probably really enjoy those. And these last 2 are about myths and legends. So here's the Myths and Legends of Spain and the Myths and Legends of Japan in this Dover edition by F. Hadlin Davis. So these are on the shelf really because I didn't have another place to put them. And I don't really read about myths and legends very often, but I like to keep them around for when I feel like it. All right, so that is the end of our book tour. This one's only 30 minutes long. The last one was 45 minutes long. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Feel free, like I said, to comment about any of these books. I'd love to hear your thoughts about them. I'd love to hear, especially if you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear about them. And I want to thank you for joining me today. Next time, I'm not sure which shelf we will do. I might do this bottom shelf next, or I might just continue on down. I don't know. I'm not sure how far I'm going to take this. If you're enjoying this series, let me know, and it will motivate me to keep going on these shelf tours. And yeah, so I want to thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time.